Tuesday. We have a special event today. It's not our regular Thursday event because today is Tuesday and we're here with the fantastic Gary Scheiner, one of TuDiabetes' favorite live event guests. Hello, Gary. I'm putting the camera on you right now. A lot of the folks in the chat room, of course, already know who you are.
Hi, everybody.
But please start with an introduction for those who do not.
Well, that ambulance going by, luckily, was not for me.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. Streets of San Francisco, right? Yeah. Anyway, I am a diabetes educator and have a practice out near Philadelphia. Work mostly with type 1s around the country, around the world on all different things, getting their diabetes under better control. I'm coming up on 29 years with type 1 myself and had a chance to try a little of everything from all the pumps and sensors and meters and medications and everything. So I've had a few go-arounds with a few of the new oral medications that are being used in type 2. I tried them myself just to see how they work. My head didn't explode, but other bad things happened that I'll share with everybody later.
Can you please show our wonderful guests the magazine cover that you showed me right before we started?
Oh, yeah. I'm no longer Gary, the diabetes expert. I am now Gadget Guy.
Look at that beautiful picture, and rightfully so, because you have worn and tried everything.
Yeah, I'm on my 27th insulin pump this week.
Which one are you on right now?
I am wearing the new Omnipod right now.
And what do you think so far?
Hey, so far so good. I wore the original Omnipod when it first came out. This was a while back. And I was very disenchanted because I was so used to having a pump at my side that I could just program anytime I wanted to eat something. And we were passing by a place in Philly, it's a mainstay, called Rita's Water Ice. I know water ice, it sounds a bit redundant, but it's like sort of like Italian ice with bits of real fruit in it. It's amazing. And it was a hot day, and my kids are all, Dad, Rita's, let's go. And I was all ready, and I got there, and I didn't have the remote control.
Oh, no.
And I started to cry right then and there.
Yeah.
And decided, I think I'll be happier with going the old way with the pump with the buttons. But for the last week, I've been doing this, and I kind of like the tubeless thing. It's sort of like, going to your first nudist colony, being totally unencumbered. Where you're a little bit nervous at first, but then you kind of get used to it. Just kind of let it all hang out.
So do you feel like that's going to be a good selling point for Omnipod, is that it reminds you of being at a nudist colony?
I hope so. I'm sure just my saying that has sent Insulet stock right through the roof. So invest now while you still can.
I wore an Omnipod for about 5 years from the sort of the moment it came on the market, and I really liked it. And now I'm on a tubed pump now, and I wake up a lot at night because I get all wrapped up in the tubing, and I have to detangle myself all the time. Although the pump I'm using works well, but that's one of the drawbacks in my view.
Yeah, I've been waiting for retractable tubing, like a tape measure that kind of goes and it goes right back in. Wouldn't that be nice?
Isn't there a pump that has that?
No. It would triple the size of the pump to do something like that. See, we had little pumps, but some guy had this idea he wanted retractable tubing, and now the pump's this big. You think I want to be blamed for that? No, thank you. I didn't mention I'm an exercise physiologist by trade, although I get involved in a lot of other areas of diabetes management. But it's always been a true passion of mine is exercise and sports. I'm proud to be in the same town with the losingest team in basketball, the Philadelphia 76ers. They're on a 21-game losing streak with no end in sight. But that's okay.
Awesome.
I still love the sport. I play some ball, believe it or not. I don't look like it, but I do like to play basketball.
It's actually hard to tell whether someone looks like they play a sport over Google Hangout.
Well, if I was to get up and...
We have a question in the chat room already about, because we were talking about Omnipod, Sarah in the chat room has asked a question, which is, have you noticed the PDM measures lower blood sugars? There's an issue, I think, with accuracy in the lower ranges. There have been problems with the test strips. So this has been a pretty hot issue recently in the diabetes news. What's your take on it, Gary?
Well, they did issue a recall of the original Freestyle test strips. The problem is not really the strips, it's the original Freestyle meter that has been reported to run a little bit on the low side. So people might underdose themselves on insulin, and it can cause their average blood sugar and their A1C to go up a bit. So essentially, people are now switching over to the Freestyle Lite, which doesn't have the same problem. And I know that the company that makes these doesn't say you can use Freestyle Lite strips in it, but you can, and they work fine. They calibrate well. They match up with other meters nicely. So problem solved. Just use the Freestyle Lite strips in there.
Awesome. We already have another question for you as well. Oh, we're getting started right out of the gates here with questions. I love it. Barbara in the chat room has a question, which is, using a pump, any suggestions for coping with exercise, say 2 to 3 hours after a mealtime bolus? She finds that if she reduces the mealtime bolus, then she'll skyrocket because of the meal. And if she does not, then she drops like a rock during the exercise due to having insulin still on board.
Well, Barbara, you've entered the twilight zone of exercise and diabetes, that 2 to 3 hour window. People who work out right after a meal, it's a very simple proposition. You cut your bolus back and things turn out great. You're exercising at a time when you still have a little bit of bolus working, but not a huge amount. So it's difficult to figure out what to do. And my recommendation is, if you're working out more than 2 hours after you've given your meal bolus normally, but have some carbohydrate right before you exercise. Preferably something that absorbs and digests really fast, a high glycemic index type of food. And Emily, you know all about those, right? Give me an example. Come on, Emily, quick. What's a high glycemic index food? Very good.
Cheerios!
Juice, Gatorade, crackers, pretzels, bread, stuff like that. Those kind of things absorb fast. Cereal, try cereal too. Those are carbs that don't sit in your stomach. They absorb into the bloodstream quickly and get into your system, so they'll keep you from going low while you exercise. Okie doke?
Okie doke. Looking good. That's a good one. There were a couple other people in the chat room who are having that same issue.
Yeah, timing is just such a critical thing with those of us on insulin. We always have to think about the timing of when we exercise and how much bolus is working, what's our basal doing at the time. I see a lot of people who think they can lower their basal for a 30-minute or 60-minute workout session and it's going to keep them from going low. It doesn't help at all. All it does is screw things up a few hours later. So for the short-term workouts, you either cut your bolus or you snack. Don't touch the basal. Don't touch that dial, because it's just going to ruin things later on. Basal adjustments work great for long-term exercise. So if you're going to be hiking all day, riding a bike a long distance, working in the yard, things like that, for hours, that's when basal adjustments work well.
Cool. We have a question from Nyadach. He posted this question before we even started our event today, Gary. So this is something that's really been weighing on.
Can people say where they're from? I'd like to know where they're from too.
Oh, that would be fun. I believe Nyadach is in the UK, actually.
Yeah.
I think so. I hope I'm right about that, and I haven't just offended you, Nayadach, for not knowing where you're from. The question is this is a sophisticated question. Is there a set way to calculate cortisol release after exercise, even more so after extended exercise? And we have a little more information here. Nayadach says, as someone who follows the adapted Burke dietary guides for carrying food while exercising, I can find it hard sometimes to carry enough fuel. Any recommendations above the use of my current own mix of energy electrolytes drinks on this and shot blocks, other than arranging fuel stops? So the issue is, Nayadach is a long-distance bicyclist, and can't seem to schlep quite enough food.
That's a good way to put it.
Carry him through these long bike rides. Mm-hmm. So we have sort of a dual question here. How do I carry enough food, and how do I calculate cortisol release after the exercise?
Well, first off, you can't calculate cortisol release. You can't quantify anything like that, so don't even bother. You got to pretend that you're a bird and you can only carry a certain amount of weight while you're flying. So for these long-distance workouts, you have to think, what is the densest, most concentrated form of carbohydrate I can find? And I believe I've found it. It is the fig Newton. Those tiny little fig Newtons are so packed with carbs, but I'm sure everyone has something that they prefer. Now, some of the energy bar type things, Cliff bars, for example, are really dense with energy. Everyone finds something that they prefer. It's hard carrying liquids to provide energy, but if you're in a race of some kind where there are pit stops, you can grab your, Gatorade or Punch or whatever they have on the sides as an energy, as a carb supplement. But really dense forms of carbs are things like fig Newtons, things that have what's in them. Well, it's like a little bit of a cookie around it, and what's that stuff in the center of a fig Newton? What do they call that? It's like a paste, but it's very concentrated. Yeah, it's
sugar jam.
Something like that. Those kind of things work well. But I'd recommend talking to some runners and cyclists who have to carry their food in very tight compartments on whatever they're wearing. That's a good place to start. But your cortisol question, I wouldn't begin to know what to tell you as far as that. I don't think it's a predictable thing. I don't think it's measurable, and it's not practical. But a lot of people do experience it, and it can cause a rise in blood sugar after a workout is over. And there's a lot of things that can make your sugar rise after a workout. That's just one of them. But if you do experience a rise on a regular basis, you got to plan your insulin accordingly. You may have to give yourself a dose or a bolus of insulin right around the end of your workout to prevent the rise from taking place. It's what your pancreas would do if it was with you today.
Here's an interesting one. Hey, Gary, I'm getting a little bit of an echo on myself over there. I don't know if you're hearing it.
I'm not getting the echo.
Okay, you're not hearing it. Okay, I hope nobody else is hearing it. So Gail in the chat room.
Where's Gail from?
Gail, where are you from?
We'll just say it's Gail from Guatemala.
Great. That's probably where she's from. Gail is trying to lose weight and is noticing that when she does any kind of weightlifting exercise, she does a lot of cardio and it is working out okay for her, but when she does weightlifting, her blood sugar goes higher and she has to do more insulin, and it seems a little self-defeating to try to lose weight by doing something that causes you to actually need more insulin. Can you talk a bit about that?
When you do an exercise like weightlifting, you're right, blood sugars don't always come down as much as if you're doing cardio. And that's simply because when you lift weights, you're also producing adrenaline. And adrenaline raises you. So the net effect, the exercise lowers you a little, the adrenaline raises you a lot, so The net effect is your sugar goes up some. But that's not where it ends, because the effects of a strength training workout typically last for well beyond the end of the exercise session. Most people who lift weights find that they need less insulin for the better part of the day. Part of the reason that your blood sugar rises is that adrenaline induces your liver to release glucose into the blood, and that those glycogen stores of the liver have to be replaced at some point. So over the next several hours, you become more sensitive to insulin, and your muscles are drawing sugar out of the bloodstream. So you got to think of the workout as how is it going to affect me for the next 12 to 24 hours, and not just while I'm doing it. So you might need a little extra insulin while you're lifting, but the long-term effect over the course of the next day is your overall insulin needs should be down. So it's still a very effective way to help you with weight reduction, or let's be specific, body fat reduction. And again, don't look at the scale specifically. If you got somebody who can do a body fat measurement on you, that's a great way to see how well you're progressing. Because you might be gaining weight in the form of muscle and bone density and increased blood volume. Those increase your weight, but you're losing body fat at the same time. So when you get on the scale, you may not see much of a change. But the body fat measurements will indicate that. And I'll show you the kind of tool we use for body fat measurement. It looks like a really evil device. It's called a skin fold caliper.
Not that!
But in the right hands, this kind of tool is a very effective way at measuring body fat percentage.
And yours are the right hands, Gary, for that?
There they are. I'm a trained expert at doing body fat measurement. Usually I just grab someone by the fat and say, oh, you got too much.
That's not allowed. I'm not coming anywhere near you anytime that you've got those skin calipers on you.
Emily, you got a lot. Looking at you, you got a lot to worry about.
I told everyone it's very hard to tell on Google Hangout what a person looks like. We have a question from Dala Josa, who says, my 11-year-old is starting to run in the mornings after school, around 2 to 3 miles. He doesn't want to eat or drink much before he runs, but then he has to munch on glucotabs the entire time that he's running. Any ideas for in the mornings, he's running in the mornings before school. I think I misread that. Any ideas for a breakfast snack that might help sustain him during the run?
All right, so this is Dala from Dallas. Well, if you're going to run first thing in the morning, blood sugars, again, may not drop as much as they will later in the day. And it's just because of hormone levels during early morning hours. But if he has to consume, let's say, 15 to 20 grams of carbs to keep his blood sugar from dropping while running, he'd be better off consuming that before the run. Drinks work great. You don't have to eat solid food. You can drink some juice. You can drink some regular Coke. You know, it's morning, so juice is probably a good choice. And particularly grape juice. Grape juice absorbs a little bit faster and raises the blood sugar a little quicker than most other juices do. Pineapple juice is pretty good for that as well. So I would just have, maybe half a cup of juice. I think even a runner, should be able to tolerate that easily enough. It beats having to chew on tablets while you're running. I have to do that sometimes when I'm on the treadmill. It's not fun. You start choking and gagging and all this, and running and trying to chew glucose tablets is never never the scene you want to get into.
I would say doing anything and trying to chew on glucose tablets at the same time.
Yeah, especially hosting a program on diabetes and chewing.
You guys notice my blood sugar is low and it's tanking. So thank you, diabetes, for knowing the perfect time for that.
Yep.
We have a question from Rogan, which is, I have a lot of trouble estimating how many carbs and insulin to eat and take. How many carbs and how much insulin I need in order to account for exercise, particularly if it's something intense that I haven't tried before. Do you have any suggestions on how to estimate or figure out how much carbohydrate, how much insulin will be needed before a given event, and maybe an unfamiliar event?
So Rogan from Rochester needs to know how to balance the exercise with the food and the insulin. And Rogan from Rochester, again, it comes back to timing. If the exercise is taking place after a meal, cutting back on the meal bolus is the best thing to do. How much to cut back depends on about 20,000 different variables. I like to start out with about a 1/3 reduction. So if you would normally have taken 6 units, cut it to 4. If you knock a third off of your dose, go exercise and see what happens. And if you keep some good, like a log of what's taking place, you can learn what adjustment's going to work best for you. If you try that 1/3 reduction and you wind up low, maybe a 50% reduction or even a 60 or 70% reduction. If you go high, you need less of a reduction. And then with the carbs, your best option, if you're going to be exercising before a meal, or like I said before, more than 2 hours after a meal, when your insulin is starting to peter off, that's the time you should have carbs to prevent the low. And there are a few different guides that have listings of what are called, it's called carb replacement for exercise. John Walsh calls them X-carbs. I call them carb replacement for exercise. So if you look in the pumping insulin book, or you look in my book, Think Like a Pancreas, there's a nice big chart in there that shows if you weigh this much and you're doing this for an hour, here's how much carbohydrate you need. It's a good starting point. It's not going to solve everyone's case exactly, but it's a good place to start. You try it and you see what happens and you fine tune. And that's diabetes. It's all trial and adjustment. We don't get anything right the first time.
Rogan, it turns out, this is crazy, isn't from Rochester, which was the first thing you pulled out of your head because you like alliteration. And it would have been awesome if Rogan was from Rochester, but Rogan is from Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
There, I finally got a location. Oh, I got Nyadach's location correct as well, actually. So we have another question now. This one, wait, put the camera back on myself while I'm...
Is that Nyadach from Nicaragua?
No. No, but thank you for asking. This is a question from Anna, who is asking if you have any tips for predicting post-strength training lows in the middle of the night or sometimes even the next day. What do you do about lows that happen a really long time after the exercise? How do you prepare for such a thing?
All right, so Anna from Alabama. Anna is having what we call a delayed onset low, and that's caused by the depletion of glycogen stores in the muscles. When you exercise your muscles very intensively to the point of exhaustion, and you deplete these energy stores, glycogen stores in the muscles are going to replenish those over the next 4, 6, 10, 12 hours. So if you find that your glucose is dropping 6, 8, 10 hours after a hard lifting session, what you'll need to do is either cut back on your basal insulin if you're on a pump. It's easy enough to do. You run a temporary basal reduction. Or you can cut back on the meal boluses you give at the next couple of meals. Or you can give yourself some free snacks. Just have some, in this case, slow digesting carbs work better. Something that's going to burn slowly and evenly over the next several hours to prevent the drop from occurring. And I'm not going to ask Emily for the example. I'll give you a few myself. Slow-burning carbs are things like yogurt, nuts, peanut butter, chocolate. Yes, Emily, chocolate. All right, we got 12 thumbs up for that one.
Woo!
Yep. So those are the kind of things. Milk, chocolate milk, those are kind of slower burning forms of carb. So modest amounts of that without insulin coverage to offset the drop that's occurring over the next several hours. Chew, swallow.
Gail, I know I'm still choking down glucotabs over here, and my colleague Heather is also enjoying her own bottle of glucotabs just now. Yeah, she's modeling
check mine.
A look of agony on her face.
I better check mine. Wait.
Yummers! Let's all take a quick peek at our blood.
Crap, I'm running a little high. All right.
Oh. No glucotabs for you right now, Gary. I'll bet you feel sad.
I'm bad. I'm really bad.
Oh.
I forgot the bolus for something I ate a little while ago.
Oops.
It happens. All
Darn,
right.
it does happen.
Better late than never. Here we
Our
go.
next question is from Jersey, who is from Alameda, California. Jersey says, I'm trying to reduce my A1C. I ride a bike 10 to 13 miles per day for the last 112 days. I lost 11 pounds, reduced cholesterol by 56 points, but my A1C stayed the same. That's frustrating. Any suggestions, Gary?
Well, I was going to say, are you having a lot of low blood sugars along with this? Now, losing weight and exercising more doesn't guarantee better blood sugars by any stretch. It requires adjustments to your insulin as well. There's also, in some cases, where people exercise a lot and end up eating a lot more food because they're just hungrier as a result of the exercise. And that can keep the A1C up a bit also. So you have to look at your blood sugars and what's going on before and after the workout sessions. So just including exercise in your program is not going to guarantee anything as far as better glucose management. If you want to lose weight and control your sugars better, try to work out after meals. It helps to minimize that after meal spike. You won't spike up nearly as much. And consider what's going on later in the day. If you find that you're having lows that you're over-treating or that you're rebounding from, that's going to work against your blood sugar control also. So sometimes you get a better average overall by getting rid of some of those lows you might be experiencing.
Sorry, I'm coming back. Moment of slow computer moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
the
our next
cells are starting to fire again. The glucose is getting there.
Not quite yet. Our next question is from Jane from Omaha, and I forgot to mention earlier, Gail is from Southern California.
Okay.
Close to where I am now in Northern California.
You're in Northern California.
What now?
Aren't you in Northern California?
I just said that.
Oh.
Yes, I am. We're in the same state. It's a big state, it's true. Jane from Omaha says, I have followed your advice for setting my son's basal rates from Think Like a Pancreas. It has worked well, but generally for only a few weeks. How often are readjustments needed for a 14-year-old who is an active athlete and has not yet hit puberty? Oh gosh, not puberty.
Yeah, you're probably going to have to adjust basal rates about every 6 to 8 hours in a case like that. No, I'm kidding. But it's really common to have to adjust the settings on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. You know, when a 14-year-old who's in a peak growth phase, and if they're not pubertal, they're prepubertal, so the hormones are kicking in, the doses have to be changed on a pretty regular basis. Usually when you start to see across-the-board elevations in the glucose levels, all of the basal settings just need to be ratcheted up, either by a percentage or by a flat amount. You know, keep the pattern the same as far as the peak and the valley, but the magnitude of the settings just needs to be increased steadily. And with boys, it's usually until they hit about age 18 or so. My son is at that age right now. He doesn't have diabetes, but it's like I've got to buy him a new pair of shoes every month because his feet are just... He's got size 11 feet, this kid. His arms are really long. He's learned how to block my shots.
Yeah, I remember when I had that giant growth spurt. It was weird, though, because then I shrunk back down.
You must have been a giant among women.
I was really tall. I must have, well, on a tall day, I make it almost up to 5'5". So now our next question is from S. Victor 07. You're talking about cutting basal versus not cutting, depending upon exercise. And I find that I need to cut my basal rate by upwards of 70% when I play golf. I use a cart. I don't walk. Any thoughts? Why would that be the case, to have to cut a basal rate so dramatically if S Victor 07 isn't even walking when playing golf? It's using a cart, but hitting a golf ball.
Well, we'll just refer to Mr. 07 as Mr. Bond. And it's possible that Mr. Bond is getting very little activity when not playing golf. So the standard basal settings he uses are pretty high, and when he plays golf, it doesn't seem like a lot of exercise, but to him it might be relative to his normal day. So that would require a sharp reduction in the basal insulin level. And it's not unusual for people who are exercising for many hours to require basal reductions of 70–80% just to keep the blood sugars from careening downward. You wouldn't think about golf, especially riding in a cart, as heavy exercise, but it's all relative to what your normal day is like. So if you spend most of your day sitting at a desk or in front of the computer or the TV, as soon as you get outdoors and you're doing anything, to your body, that's a fairly hard workout. I played golf twice in my life. Once when I was a teenager, and once last year. When I was a teenager, all I knew was miniature golf. I didn't know there was any other club besides a putter. So I put the ball on the tee, and I was with some of my friends, took that putter, and whack! And it was vibrating like crazy. And they were laughing their you-know-what's off. So that was the end of my golf career. And I played last year because it was a fundraiser and some people invited me. I had fun the first couple of holes.
Did you do any better?
No. But I learned that there were other kinds of clubs, so I tried using those. But I got worse as it proceeded. I mean, the first couple of holes, I must have just gotten lucky. I had some good shots. And it just went downhill from there.
Oh.
Yeah, it was called a scramble, so the person with the best shot, everyone played from that point. I never got the best shots, though. If I got that much time to spend and the weather outside is decent, I got other things I'd rather be doing.
Yeah, I heard that you were telling me earlier your game is basketball.
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Yeah, it was basketball.
That's right.
That's your game.
You should see me with the sports goggles on and everything. I look like I'm mining to the center of the earth.
I'll bet that you do. Okay, next question is from Arun. For a 4-hour marathon, should I reduce my basal rate, and by how much?
Arun from Altoona. Ooh. We're going to figure that in your case, in most marathoners, blood sugars go up at the beginning of the run, just from the excitement, the adrenaline, and after the first few miles, then things settle in and start to drop off pretty quickly because you're burning a lot of energy when you run. So you probably will not need to lower the basal until the start of the run. In fact, before the run, you may need extra insulin to keep from being in the 200 and 300 range, because that's going to hurt your performance and dehydrate you more than you need to be. But yeah, during the middle and end of a long run like that, a sharp reduction in your basal will be helpful. And 70%, 80% reduction is a good idea. There's a big difference between getting just a trace of insulin and getting none at all. If you get none at all, your blood sugar will probably shoot very, very high, dangerously high, and you could also start to become ketotic. And you run the risk of going into ketoacidosis. But getting a little bit of insulin is enough to feed your body's cells the fuel they need. You won't produce ketones. Your blood sugar shouldn't shoot all that high. So, not knowing you or your patterns, that's just the typical pattern I see in people who are doing marathons, where the sugars do go up a little at the beginning, but then drop steadily from that point on.
Right. Now we move on to a question from Tim 2, who I'm looking for where Tim 2 is from, and I don't see it. In Think Like a Pancreas, you make a number of mentions, him of pramlintide. This isn't available in the UK. Oh, there we go. In the UK, where I'm from. When I asked my consultant, he mentioned safety concerns. Are you aware of any safety concerns relating to pramlintide? And are you aware of any moves to make it available in the UK?
Well, pramlintide is also known as Symlin.
Ah.
You've heard of that,
That
right?
one I've heard of.
Symlin is a hormone that's normally produced by the beta cells of the pancreas along with insulin. And it supplements insulin in that it kind of slows down the appearance of sugar in the bloodstream. It blunts appetite, so you eat less. It slows digestion, so the sugars appear more gradually in the blood. And it also shuts down the production of glucagon by the pancreas, which also helps control the after-meal blood sugars. So it's really a tool for controlling the post-meal blood sugar levels, keeping them from peaking and spiking too high. It can cause some nausea. It usually does at the beginning for people that use it. And one of the major risks with it is hypoglycemia, because insulin needs are lower when you use it, and blood sugars peak much later than they usually do. So people who use it need to both delay and oftentimes reduce their mealtime insulin doses. The biggest danger with it is if you do become hypoglycemic while it's working, and it usually works for about 3 hours after it's injected. If you have a low during that 3-hour window, you're in some trouble because it's going to be very hard to recover. Anything you eat is going to sit in your stomach and not digest all that rapidly. So you might stay low and become severely low for a while. So people who have lows who have taken this stuff have to just put some gel in their mouth and let it kind of absorb through the lining of the mouth. They can give themselves glucagon injections with an insulin syringe. Don't make the face. You do it with an insulin syringe, it's not that bad. But preventing the low is key. So I recommend in relation to exercises that you do not use Symlin or pramlintide if you're going to be exercising after that meal, because the risk of the low is just much too great. And you probably don't need it. If you're going to exercise after a meal, you're going to accomplish a lot of the same things. Your appetite's going to go down while you're working out. Your food's going to digest much more slowly, so you're not going to get the big spike anyway. So it's not even practical or necessary to use it if you're going to work out post-meal. Cool. And by the way, as far as its availability in the UK, I really am not sure about that. I'm not optimistic that it's going to be made available. The company that makes it, Amylin Pharmaceuticals, has been bought by a few other companies. And I'm not sure exactly what they're going to be doing as far as that product line. They're investing quite a bit in Bydureon, which is a longer-acting medication called a GLP-1. It does similar things, but one injection of it lasts for about a week, as opposed to Symlin, which lasts for about 3 hours. So I'm not entirely sure the product line is going to be available for that much longer, and I don't know that they're going to try to spread it to other parts of the world.
Our next one is, now we have Rhonda from Houston, Texas. Why does it seem so difficult to lose weight? I only consume 1,200 calories a day plus walking for exercise 2 miles per day. Still, it seems that the weight hangs on. What are your suggestions?
Emily, still there? You froze.
Did I freeze? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
A little bit, yeah. Your picture's frozen. Okay, now I can see.
Pixelated. Did you hear the question?
I can't hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me just address the issue of why it's so challenging to lose the weight. If you're on insulin and trying to lose weight, the weight will not come off It will not come off unless you find ways to reduce your insulin requirements. Insulin promotes the storage of fuel in the body's cells. Muscle cells mostly take up glucose. Your fat cells take up larger amounts of fat in the presence of insulin. So if you are not reducing your insulin doses, you're not going to lose body fat. It's just going to stay there, and it's going to force you to eat to keep your blood sugar from going low. So whatever you're doing, whether with exercise and diet, it's all for naught if you don't use it to cut back on your insulin doses. The timing, again, is key. Try to get your exercise after meals so you can cut back on your meal doses. Look at paring back a bit on the carb amounts, not having the concentrated sugars that are going to spike you too much and require higher doses. Do everything possible to avoid hypoglycemia, because that's just a sign that you're getting too much insulin and you're having to consume extra food to deal with it. And there's a whole slew of medications that can help with weight loss now, even in people with type 1 diabetes. Metformin is a med that's been around for decades now. It's got a very good safety profile, and it's pretty effective at reducing basal insulin requirements because it slows down the liver's output of glucose. So that's a good one to start with. The medications that we just mentioned, the Simlin and the other ones, the pramlintide is a generic, but exenatide, which is Byetta, Bydureon, and Victoza, those are GLP-1 medications that also help with weight loss. Even in type 1s, they're beneficial in that regard. They blunt appetite, they slow digestion, they slow glucagon production, so insulin needs go down. And there's a new class of medications. This is the one that I tried recently, called SGLT2 inhibitors. Invokana is the one that's currently on the market. There's another one that just got FDA clearance. And what these medications do is they turn the kidneys into sugar-eliminating organs. And ordinarily, we know that when our blood sugar gets really high, we start spilling sugar in the urine. Above 180 or above 10 millimole, the kidneys start eliminating sugar. It spills over into the urine. And that's why we have to pee so much when our sugar's high. What these medications do is they kind of lower the dam so that the kidneys start spilling sugar at a lower point. Even with a blood sugar of 120 or 100, you're still spilling sugar in the urine. So you're eliminating calories that way as well as lowering the blood sugar. So it can be an effective weight loss tool. It's kind of analogous to purging. People that have an eating disorder and force themselves to vomit or take laxatives, so they're just losing calories all the time. But this is a way that's not really harmful to the body. And it's not harmful to the kidneys either. It's a passive process. It's just taking the dam and lowering it so the sugar spills a lot easier. The kidneys don't have to do any extra work to accomplish that. So you will, spill away hundreds of calories a day and lose a lot of glucose, so your insulin needs go down. That can be another effective way to lose the weight. But it's also worthwhile to maybe meet with a dietitian or an exercise physiologist that can take a look at your caloric balance and make sure that you are really burning more calories than you consume. A lot of people think they are, but they're not. Now, there are some folks I work with who exercise diligently every day for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and they're not moving the other 23 and a half hours. They're very sedentary, which doesn't help. So you got to look at the big picture and see what you're really burning and what you're taking in.
Can you hear me, Gary?
Yes.
Awesome. So Gail from Southern California is kind of chiming in on this topic as well, asking for people with diabetes, are there particular recommendations for exercise that's great for weight loss? And including things like, is there a best time of day to exercise? Is there a best kind of exercise? What sets us up the best for weight loss?
Well, ultimately, weight loss means you're going to have to burn more calories than you consume. And the exercises that burn the most calories are ones that are at a moderate to high intensity, but that allow you to do them for an extended period of time. Because if you just sprint all out, you're going to be tired in under a minute. You need to do something that's not quite at a maximum intensity. but it needs to be a relatively high intensity so you're burning a lot of energy. Also, exercises that use a lot of big muscles are beneficial because they're also burning a lot of energy. So if you get on the remote for an hour, you're not burning a ton of energy because it's not a huge muscle, even though you're using it constantly for an hour. But exercises that use the thighs, the back, the core, those are large muscles. And if you're using upper and lower body simultaneously, even better. So things like cross-country skiing burn lots of energy. Swimming burns lots of energy. Again, rowing, things that are using both upper and lower body. Aerobic dance can do that. So those are the ones that are, yeah, there you go. Those are the things that burn lots and lots of energy. Running will almost always burn a lot more energy than walking, although you can walk on an incline and still burn a lot of calories. So, in terms of the type of exercise, it's, do something that you enjoy doing, something you have access to, also something that won't cause a lot of injuries because that'll knock you out of your program. As far as the time of day goes, it doesn't really matter whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, but if you take insulin at meal times, it's best to exercise soon after the meal. That way you can cut your dose back. If you're indifferent about the time of day, morning is a good choice. People who work out in the morning tend to stick with their program much longer than those who work out later in the day. Why do you think that is?
Who tend to stick to the... Heather has a guess. Come on over here.
No. Tired at the end of the day.
Because we're tired at the end of the day. This is Heather's guess. But for some reason she's being shy and doesn't want to get in front of me.
Oh, Heather, don't be coy. Come on. Let's hear what you have.
Tired at the end of the day. I work out in the morning. And for me, part of the reason that's important is because at that time of day, I am not going to get up and start thinking, oh, I should do the laundry instead, or I should get this other thing done. Like, I'm either going to be asleep or I'm going to go to the gym, and I make myself go to the gym. That's my answer.
It's all about competing responsibilities and just things that get in the way. There's a lot less to get in the way first thing in the morning.
I'm right.
Go, Emily. You got it.
I'm doing the I'm right dance.
Woohoo! You got it. Yeah. So,
okay, we have so many good questions. Gary, we're not even going to make it through all the great questions for you here. But let's move on. We have one from Michael from Florida, who is trying to figure out his sensitivity factor. But right now, he has LADA. He's still kind of in the honeymoon phase, so he's using boluses. He isn't using basal insulin. And so he's asking, should I double my total daily dose and then use the 1700 rule? I don't fully understand this question, so I'm hoping that you do.
I think I do. Usually, to figure out a person's sensitivity, we first have to know how much total insulin they take in a day. And that's assuming their body's not making insulin. But clearly, Michael from Miami, we'll just use that, Michael is still producing his own insulin since he's not requiring shots of basal. He's not taking any long-acting. And for most people, the basal insulin is usually around 40–45% of their day's total. So if he's taking, let's say, 20 units of mealtime insulin, if he wasn't producing any of his own, he might be taking 15 or 16 of long-acting as well. So yeah, Michael, if you take your mealtime doses and add 40% or so to it, you probably get a good idea of what your total will be like if your pancreas wasn't secreting anything. And you can plug that into the 1700 rule to come up with a daytime correction factor. So in your case, let's say it's 20 of mealtime, 15 of basal, it's 35. And 1700 divided by 35 is about 50, give or take. So that's a good approximation of what your daytime correction factor would be. Now, some people find that they drop more per unit at night than they do during the day. So if you drop 50 points during the day, to play it safe, you might want to assume 75 at night. That way you don't overdose yourself for any high readings at bedtime or in the middle of the night. And if none of this makes sense, Emily will explain it all now. Or where's Manny? Manny
Yeah,
looks.
don't worry. I'm going to translate that for everybody. Oh, wait. I don't have
Read the
time
book.
for more questions.
Okay, get my book. It's all explained in there. How's that?
It's a great book. We've all got it here. Okay, well, here's one from Boulder Bird. I wonder where Boulder Bird is from.
Boulder.
Oh my God, really? Gary, after your last talk on TuDiabetes, I bought your book. And in one part, you suggest sending you home-baked treats to your office. My question to you is, really? Because I'll do that. You're that awesome.
Man, I knew there'd be benefits to this gig.
Somebody might send you some cookies.
I'm up for it.
Work for.
Chocolate chip, I really do like. I like sprinkle cookies too. I love cookies.
Wait,
with
so now
sprinkles.
you're giving requests even.
Yeah. You send me butter cookies with sprinkles. I'm yours for life.
Well, so take
Don't let
notes.
my kids find out that I've got cookies, or I won't get any.
Next, we've got David from Oregon, who says, I used to bicycle a great deal, and I'm preparing to begin doing it again. That's awesome, David. But in the meantime, I have begun using a basal insulin, Levemir. What should I expect? So David is a type 2, and he wasn't on basal insulin, apparently, back when he used to do a lot of biking. So it's going to be a different experience this time.
Well, David, expect drops in your blood sugar. Levemir is working, around the clock. Some people take it twice a day, some take it once a day, but you're going to have some insulin working all the time. So expect during the time you're exercising that your sugars will have a tendency to drop. So you got to monitor yourself closely. Check your blood before you go out riding. Keep some carbs with you, and you may need to stop periodically and eat something or drink something with carbs to prevent a low. My suggestion would be the first time you do it, just have the carbs with you and check your blood every 30 to 60 minutes and just see where you are. And if you find you're starting to drop, then eat them. You never know. You may not need them, but my guess is you probably will need some carbs. I used to have to stop about every 30 to 45 minutes when I was on long-acting insulin. On a pump, it's just easier. I lower my basal. You don't have that option with long-acting insulin. And you can't just drop it from 9 to 12 and have it just lower then. When you lower your Levemir, you got 24 hours, so you've changed your dose. So it's not practical to do that. And also watch out afterwards. Someone earlier mentioned that they'd get a low sugar hours later. That can happen as well. So again, just monitor yourself frequently the days you ride and the night you ride, just to see what your pattern is like. And then you can, I think the solutions are going to be obvious. Your voice disappeared, Emily. Your lips are moving, but nothing's coming out. Wait.
Sorry, I was still muted.
There you go.
There's so many buttons to push on this thing.
And so few tablets.
So now I've got from Ray Hodges. This one's really interesting, I think. I notice myself getting low before exercise. This is before exercise very often, even with extra carbs ahead of the exercise. One doctor explained something like this to me as the body prepping or warming up for upcoming exercise. Seems counter to the early high from adrenaline. What is going on? Somehow his body knows he's going to start exercising and it drops.
That's interesting. I'd like to follow Ray around for a day and see what's really happening. So Ray, maybe you can get a little camcorder on yourself or some kind of spy cam and just follow all of your patterns through the course of the day, and we'll see what's happening. I can't imagine that the physical act of putting on your sneakers is going to make your sugar drop. I'd be very curious to see what your sugars are like at those times of day when you don't exercise, and compare it to those times of day when you do, I don't think there's going to be any difference at all. But hey, if there is, there's a reason, and if you look long enough, you'll find it. Maybe your eating patterns were a little different. Some people on the day they work out, they just feel more in tune with their health. They eat better, not as much junk. That could have something to do with it. Maybe your insulin dosing is different on those days. Who knows? Maybe your stress level is lower the days you're going to exercise because you just feel better and get less stress hormones in circulation. Could be anything. But if you found out that you're putting on your sneakers and your shorts lowers your blood sugar, then you just put a lot of health clubs out of business.
And I would like to borrow your sneakers and your shorts, Ray.
Yeah, maybe he's got these sneakers where they lace all the way up your leg and you got to do all this stuff. You know.
And it's a workout to just put
Oh,
them
it's
on.
the ones with the pump where you got to pump the air into them. So he's pumping for 15 minutes to get his shoes full of air. There's your workout.
It would only make sense if in order to put on your sneakers and your shorts, Ray, you had to shovel some snow. Then we would know for sure what was going on.
Or maybe his sneakers are so far buried in the back of Ray's closet that he's got to shovel his way through all the stuff to get to his shoes.
Anything involving a shovel, basically, is going to drop your blood sugar through the floor. We all know this.
Hey, maybe Ray's the type that likes to bury his shoes in the backyard. We don't know. He's got to dig them up in order to put them on.
We clearly...
How much
Ray,
do we
now you're
really
just
know?
getting... He's like...
How much do we know about this Ray character? We know very little.
You're right.
I mean, he may have to run to the store to buy sneakers in order to put them on. We don't know.
Let's try to... We've run out of time, but I want to ask at least one more question. Can you stick around, Gary, for a few more minutes? Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because there have been a couple of people who asked questions and I haven't gotten to any of their questions. One is Dr. Jody asked, do you suggest prescribing Invokana to people with type 1 diabetes?
There are a lot of endocrinologists doing it routinely now. I think it depends on the individual's needs because there are side effects. You know, the Invokana is going to increase urination. I mean, you're going to be urinating a lot. You better be near a bathroom just about all the time. During the night, you'll be getting up to go to the bathroom. So there's got to be a lot of benefit. People are at increased risk for urinary tract infections because of all the extra sugar in their urine constantly. So those are things to watch for. Low blood pressure can occur. Orthostatic hypotension, where you get a little lightheaded when you stand up because you're urinating so much, your fluid levels are low. So somebody who is really in need of weight loss, who's really having issues with a lot of variability, peaks and valleys in their blood sugar, could certainly benefit from it. Someone who's trying to get their insulin usage down could definitely benefit from it. But they also have to be instructed to hydrate really, really carefully. And you know, you've got to practice good hygiene so that the urinary tract infections are reduced as well. So you got to pick your patient.
All right, our final question for today comes from Boulder Bird, the one who is going to be sending you cookies.
He can ask all the questions he wants.
Yeah, Gary will stay here for the rest of the day for you, Boulder Bird. The question is, there has been some talk that restricting calories while limiting oneself to steady-state cardio actually trains the body to use fewer calories. Is there any truth to that?
Yes, there is. And this goes back to hundreds and hundreds of years ago when people lived in states of feast and famine. And those who survived the famine were the ones whose metabolism would downregulate when there was very little food available. So we've evolved into people whose metabolisms do slow down when there's a severe limit on calories being put in our bodies, which allows us to survive a famine pretty nicely, but when there's lots of food around, it's not such a good thing. So it can be And paradoxically, you can start to gain weight if you cut your calories too much. It's important to get at least a sufficient amount of calories to meet your basic metabolic needs. And likewise, you got to get enough carbohydrates in your diet to meet your energy needs in order to spare your protein from being converted to glucose. So that's, again, it's a good reason to work with a dietitian who knows what they're doing. We got some people on staff here. All of our diabetes educators here have type 1, live with it day in and day out, and really know their stuff when it comes to nutrition counseling. So hope you don't mind if I just give a plug for our staff here. But we work with again, people around the world, around the country, and do most of our appointments now through phone, through Skype. Someday we'll get the hang of Google Hangouts and maybe use that. FaceTime, whatever means are available. So we're able to coach people and teach them good management skills no matter where they are.
Awesome. And I wanted to tell folks that I just quite recently started working with Gary to help me with some of my blood sugar management issues. Smoothing out some glitches, as of course there are always glitches in blood sugar management. And so far it's been a really exciting process, and I'm making some changes that I think are, it's only been a few days, but I'm making some changes with Gary's guidance that I'm really excited about. So I'm going to plug your services as well. I like how you said that everybody who works there has diabetes and live with it day in and day out. Because I only have it actually during the week, and on the weekends I don't have it. So that's great. That works out really nicely.
This is part of the problem, Emily.
Oh,
We've got you on the 15-year plan to get your blood sugars in control. The needs list is just growing every day.
We just chip away at it, chip away.
Diddle at a time, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Gary. This has been awesome. Thank you to everyone in the chat room and who has been watching and participating, asking questions and commenting. It's always wonderful to have you on here, Gary, because you are, as I said at the beginning, a TuDiabetes favorite. Your information is absolutely indispensable to so many people, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, thanks. Yeah, the TuDiabetes community is like no other. This is it's a passionate and knowledgeable group of people, and it's a pleasure to be on.
We will see you again in May.
And we're going to focus on weight control.
Awesome. There's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah.
Great. So for those of you who don't know, we have an arrangement with Gary for this year that he will actually be doing one of these events on the TuDiabetes homepage every other month. So if you didn't get to ask a question, or you asked a question and we didn't manage to get to it, or if you didn't understand an answer, then come back to the next one. And in the meantime, call Gary at work. Send him some cookies and a question.
Sprinkle cookies. Love
Some sprinkle cookies. All right. Thanks so much, Gary. Thank you to everyone out there, and we'll see you soon.
See you later.